The president and managing member of the Kilduff Company based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Kilduff Company is a privately held real estate development company. Mr. Kilduff has over 22 years of involvement in retail and other commercial development projects across the country. He's here to testify on behalf of the International Council of Shopping Centers. With over 75,000 members, the ICSC is the leading trade association of the retail development community. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ranking Member Shadow. As mentioned, my name is Larry Kilduff. I am the chairman of the Environmental Policy Committee and the recent past Central Division Government Relations Chair for ICSC. I'm also the founder, to supplement that volunteer work, of the Kilduff Company in Mequon, Wisconsin. The Kilduff Company participates in development and consulting projects in retail marketplaces around the country. However, our passion and specialty is urban redevelopment and revitalization. We've made an indelible mark in neighborhoods throughout the United States by applying unique talents and philosophy to assist communities and individual developers in their economic renovation efforts. I am here today representing our trade association, the International Council of Shopping Centers, which was founded in 1957 and is currently more than 75,000 members strong in over 90 countries, including shopping center owners, developers, managers, marketing specialists, investors, lenders, retailers, and all other professional endeavors that participate in our industry, including academics and public officials. I'm here today specifically because of the concern over the so-called tax extender legislation and that it continues to languish. This legislation contains a number of tax provisions that expired at the end of 2007 or are set to expire in 2008. In particular, ICSC supports the immediate extension of the 15-year depreciation for leasehold improvements, brownfield expensing, the new market tax credit, and a number of energy tax incentive provisions. One of the most important obligations of a shopping center owner is to provide modern, efficient, and environmentally sound retail space for tenants and the public. Owners must periodically refurbish or replace, usually every 5 to 10 years, many components of their buildings. Sometimes these requirements are in the lease and they're required to be either paid for by landlords or paid for in part by landlords through incentives back to the tenants. The 5 to 10 year lease period is fairly common in our industry. These improvements can be fairly substantial. They can include HVAC, they can include interior walls, plumbing, electrical, things that have to comply with ever-changing codes for building construction and also for environmental improvements. The 15-year depreciation period for such leasehold improvements more closely reflects, although it doesn't perfectly match, but it does more closely reflect the active life of these improvements and the market practices in today's environment. In Alaska, a friend of ours who owns a family shopping center, they've owned it for many, many years and developed it in Anchorage, and as it's continued to grow, it's become a major shopping center in that area, and yet is still a family-owned business, is faced with the dilemma of having to try and make a decision as to whether to make a substantial renovation of the property. With a 15-year depreciation schedule and a shopping center of that size, notwithstanding the size of the shopping center, the owner is small. The margins are very thin, and the decision to go forward may or may not be completely reliant on the possibility of the depreciation schedule being 15 years and being made permanent. Brownfield remediation expensing is also very important to small developers. As a small developer who focuses on urban projects, I wrestle with my share of environmentally contaminated properties and developed a good deal of experience with these properties, both with the cleanup of brownfields and assisting others in that endeavor. Just as my Alaska example shows, with the leasehold depreciation schedule, this program for remediation expensing is vital. I'm currently involved in a project in the early due diligence stages in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It's a 40-acre mixed-use development adjacent to retail and commercial that consists primarily of senior housing and multifamily residential. This is an infill project that will ultimately, upon completion, generate a tax increment of over $80 million. And while my company is small, the group of people that we have put together to do a project of this magnitude is looking forward to doing it. It's adjacent to a landfill that has been active for over 30 years. This landfill is part of the project. Without the cleanup of that landfill, this project can't go forward. The property is owned by the same people. The city is afraid to test it. The landowner doesn't want to test it. Nobody wants to know what's in it until they know how they're going to pay for cleaning it up. And this could very well affect our ability to go forward. When we measure risk profile for a project like this, if we look at it and say we don't know what it's going to cost to clean it up, We won't know what it's going to cost to clean it up until we test. Once we test, we may have to acknowledge what's in there, and somebody in this picture is going to be responsible for it. We have to look very, very hard at whether or not we can even make that effort. Knowing that you could at least appreciate the expense of that cleanup can have a major impact on that. It would, with urban projects, it's also very important to mention that anything that can measure or level the playing field with risk can be very, very important. And I would urge you to also consider the bill that was forwarded by Mike Turner and Stephanie Tubbs-Jones. I realize there's no time for Congress to pass H.R. 3080 this year, the Brownfield Cleanup Act, but Representative Tubbs-Jones understood that making the transferable tax credit available to small businesses could tip the balance in that very decision-making. We also do support new market tax credits. The process is cumbersome and sometimes doesn't do as good a job as it could, but it also falls into that category of things that help balance the imbalance in urban redevelopment. And then lastly, we would also look at your support for commercial tax, building tax deduction, and carried interest. We believe that the carried interest problem is significant as it relates to the small businesses in this country, and I would love to entertain questions on that if you have any interest. At this time, I think I would just like to thank you for, Madam Chairwoman, for your prompt enactment of the tax extenders legislation.